Week 9 in the National Football League. It was an eventful one, wasn't it? Let's get down to business. Now, I did go 13-3 in the money line, and one team very specifically caused me a perfect 5 for 5 this week in best bet. I said going into the week, I didn't love the lines. I thought the lines were very strange. The games I picked, I did like. And I did promise you guys last week that, at the end of week 9, I would compare where I was at during week 9 of the 2022 NFL season, as we are now halfway through, obviously, the football season. I'm going to compare to where I was halfway through last year as opposed to this year when it came to my money line picks and best bets. So last year in the money line, I was 80-56 through week 9. Same amount of games, by the way, 136 games. This year, I am 92-43, which is a 12-game difference. In best bets, obviously, we do 5 bets a week. So for week 9, that's 45 bets. Last year, I was 25-45 in best bets. It's only 55%. This year, I'm 3 games better. I'm 28-44 and 1 push. So if we didn't get the push, obviously we'd be 3 games better. If we did, we'd be 4 games better. But again, 3 games better overall in best bets and a massive 12 games better in the money line this year as opposed to last year. I do think it's getting a little bit easier to pick games because you're picking the game with either the better coach in some situations or the better quarterback. Most of the time it's working out, and it worked out most of the time again this week, except for arguably a couple games. So we're kicking it off Thursday Night Football. Pittsburgh defeated the Titans 20-16. The line was 2.5. I said I'm taking Pittsburgh 2.5. It was closer than I thought it was going to be. I thought Will Levis would struggle against this Mike Tomlin-led defense. His first career start on the road, that hostile environment on a Thursday night. But we all know the Steelers' offense is a pop gun offense. So as long as Will Levis did not turn the ball over, Tennessee had a chance to win the game, which he did not. Matt Canada calling plays on the sideline for the first time did not seem to help Kenny Pickett that much. And we talk about this all the time here on this show at nauseum, maybe more than any other podcast in the country, about what's working today in the National Football League. You need a great quarterback and you need a great coach, and very preferably now an offensive-minded head coach, specifically if you have a young quarterback. Obviously, C.J. Stroud is breaking the mold down there in Houston with what he's doing with DeMeco Ryans. We know Josh Allen as a defensive coach. We know Justin Herbert has a defensive coach. I don't necessarily like either coach if they're winning because of how great the quarterback is. Yet you look at teams like Kansas City, Cincinnati, Philadelphia, all top quarterbacks, all offensive coaches. To me, there's a reason for that. Nonetheless, though, the Steelers are a proud franchise based on toughness and defense and culture. And they're the first team since 1933 for the first 8 games to have a winning record and to be outgained in every single game. Pittsburgh cannot move the ball. Kenny Pickett is not the answer quarterback. They're going to think they're winning because of him when they're not. Nonetheless, it's just what Mike Tomlin does. For Tennessee, again, if Will Levis can keep this up, you may have a chance at a franchise quarterback. I was not the biggest fan of Will Levis coming out of Kentucky. He reminded me a little bit of Zach Wilson, reminded me a little bit of Johnny Manziel. I may be wrong. Obviously, Burks had that scary fall at the end of the game. They need to get him a number 2 wide receiver. They need to get him more weapons. Maybe they move on from Derrick Henry and go to the receiver side of the ball, which they should. I think Will has shown some potential. He has a big arm, but as we've seen in the NFL before, big arms doesn't always mean immediate success. To me, he's going to have to win games, though, to be proven the franchise quarterback of the Tennessee Titans. Next game was obviously in Germany between the Dolphins and the Chiefs, and the Chiefs shut out Miami in the first half. And by the way, that crazy play where they knocked the ball to Tyreek Hill, the lateral back for the touchdown, which pretty much seemingly opened up this ball game. That might have been the play of the year in the National Football League. But Kansas City did not score in the second half. They only scored 14 offensive points the whole game. They came out angry. They came out pissed off. They could have blown Miami out, and they did not blow Miami out. And a lot of people want to call Miami frauds because, they did lose to Philadelphia. They did lose to Buffalo. They did lose to Kansas City. But I got to tell you, I'll tell you, Tagovailoa dropping the snap on fourth down. It felt like Miami had a chance to go in there and beat Kansas City. They outscored them 14-0 in the second half. I think the Dolphins, and I've said this all year, they're built for September. They're built for October. They are built for being in Miami. They're not built for going into Buffalo and winning. They're not built to go into Philadelphia and win in late games. And it all depends on Tua Tagovailoa's health. But when you have that much speed, and we know in the NFL, physicality can kill speed, but we also know speed kills. Raheem Mostert, they're getting, a Quayne back at the running back position. It sounds like after their bye week. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. Tua's on time. If he hits that first window, Miami could blow out anybody in the National Football League. They have a little bit of a Mike Tyson quality that Buffalo had a couple years ago, which was they can knock you out within 5 minutes, but if you hang around with them, they're not going to be able to win the big game. And then the Browns, listen, Deshaun Watson did not play well. I'm kind of shocked he played. But there is really no stock in this. Again, I should have taken the Browns at 7.5 over that New England bet I made, which we're going to talk about it in a few minutes. But I did not know if it was going to be Deshaun Watson or PJ Walker at the time. I did not know how this Browns offense was going to look with Deshaun Watson back. They beat up on Clayton too. Whoop-de-doo. Arizona's bringing back Kyler Murray next week, obviously, and returning away Josh Dobbs. What a story he was for the Vikings this week. We're going to get to that in a minute. But the Browns play Baltimore now in Baltimore coming up on Sunday. We know Baltimore dismantled P.J. Walker and the Browns in week 4 in Cleveland. Speaking of Baltimore, they dismantled Seattle 37-3. They did the same thing to Detroit. And again, I like the Lions. I think that they're a year away. I like Seattle's roster. I think they need to make a quarterback change. I don't think it was ever more clear in the world than it was on Sunday that Geno Smith cannot get you to the Super Bowl. He may be able to get you to the playoffs in a weekend FC. But when you go up against a great team in the Baltimore Ravens, and I've been saying, by the way, the Ravens have been a great team for 2 years now. I said it last year. If Lamar Jackson did not get hurt, they would have won the division over Cincinnati. They are out to prove people wrong this year. Lamar Jackson, statistically, is having the best throwing year of his career. And everybody wants to call him a running back, yet all Baltimore does is they keep winning. They don't have a ton of talent on defense, but they have, led by Roquan Smith and Marlon Humphrey. They are getting after the quarterback. They are rough, they are tough, and they are running the football down people's throats and winning in the vertical passing game when they have to. Baltimore can win many different ways. It's why they're one of the best teams in the National Football League. For Seattle, Geno Smith has regressed over the last month, and they don't even look like a playoff team right now. Again, Washington beat New England. Who would have thought Bill Belichick would be unable to rattle Sam Howell? New England was up 17-10 at one point in this game. Washington, as we mentioned, come back to win 20-17. I've been saying over the last month, I don't care if Bill Belichick got a contract extension. I feel like he's on the hot seat. And for Washington, this probably delays the Ron Rivera firing another week. They're not really going anywhere. I think they're going to give Sam Howell one more year with probably Bieniemy as the head coach. But, not a ton to say here. It's just, Washington and New England, two mediocre franchises. How about the Bucs and Texans? We all thought this was going to be a snooze fest. This turned into one of the best games of the entire weekend. Houston winning the game 39-37. C.J. Stroud almost throwing for 500 yards. 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. I have been a little bit hesitant to crown C.J. Stroud, him yet, because he's got a defensive coach. He hasn't had the best competition, but this was definitely the best coach defense he's gone up against yet in his career. We know Todd Bowles is a very good defensive coordinator, not necessarily a coach, but a very good defensive coordinator. And he had to win a shootout because Baker Mayfield woke up feeling dangerous like he did in that 2020 season in Cleveland, throwing dots all over the place to Chris Godwin and those receivers. And White had a good game out of the backfield. And I think the result of this game is good for all sides. I said going into the year, Houston was going to win 7-8 games. They got a lot of free agents, signings. D'Amico Ryans was the one defensive coach that I actually liked because he was young. He was a former player. He can relate to people. And I think that Tampa needs to go out. I think they need to tank for a quarterback. As well as Baker Mayfield played, I would see what you have in Kyle Trask for the rest of this season. Doesn't look like they're going to do that yet, and I think it's a mistake. The Rams just signed Carson Wentz. It sounds like Matthew Stafford's hand injury is worse than we thought. It's actually a thumb injury. Who knows if Stafford is going to be, back this season? I think the Rams realize they're not going anywhere. Let's try to get the best pick we possibly can. Green Bay, Jordan Love did not work. We know Green Bay. We know they can barely move the ball against the Rams. They put up 20 points, mostly taking advantage of turnovers. Jordan Love did not have a great game again. Jordan Love has not popped since week 1 against Chicago. And what we know about Chicago now, as opposed to going into the year, is Chicago's not very good, and they're about to move off Matt Eberflus, and their quarterback is Tyson Bagent, and they couldn't even beat the Saints, who it took the Saints 5 turnovers by Chicago to only win by a touchdown. That was an absolute terrible watch between two defensive coaches in Matt Eberflus and Dennis Allen. The Packers are not very good. They won. The Saints are not very good. There's not a ton to talk about these games. These are two franchises, the Packers and the Saints. One has an offensive coach, Matt LaFleur. One is a defensive coach in Dennis Allen. If I'm Green Bay and Matt LaFleur, and a lot like Pittsburgh, Green Bay's organization is tough. Tradition. We went from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers. We still believe in Jordan Love. You got to be able to move off Jordan Love. You got to be able to go get a quarterback. And for New Orleans, they're going to convince themselves that they're going to win this putrid NFC South division because Atlanta can't beat Josh Dobbs coming off the bench. And they're going to ride with Derek Carr for another year, and they need to completely blow it up because they're not a great football team either. How about Josh Dobbs, though? Winning that game 31-28, Minnesota over Atlanta. I got this game wrong in the money line. I said I don't trust either team. I don't know what I'm going to get out of Minnesota. And Atlanta pretty much had the whole game won. And then what do you know? Josh Dobbs comes off the bench and he plays better than like half the quarterbacks in the NFL played this weekend. And the Minnesota Vikings win the game because the Atlanta Falcons are not a well-coached team. They turned to Bijan Robinson, number 8 overall in the NFL draft, and he only has 1 carry inside the red zone this year, which is absolutely disgusting. I've said it since like week 5, and it's because I have Bijan Robinson on my fantasy team. I have no idea what the hell Arthur Smith is doing. Taylor Heinicke played okay. He did better than Desmond Ridder. But I thought if you're going to use Taylor Heinicke, you get Bijan Robinson more involved. And they're still obsessed with trying to use Tyler Algier and Cordell Patterson. And you know me, I'm all about rotating the backs. But if you're going to spend a top 10 pick for one of the best running backs we've ever seen come out of college, Bijan Robinson out of Texas, and refuse to use him, and then you refuse to use Kyle Pitts. Jonnu Smith had another big game. Drake London was out, and Atlanta still should have won that game. Atlanta, I cannot figure out. Minnesota's going to save their season here with easy dubs. There is a potential for Josh Dobbs to take that team to the playoff, who have good offensive pieces once Justin Jefferson gets back. Now, why do you want to bang on Bryce Young? He did throw 2 interceptions to Kenny Moore. They were both taken back. 2 pick sixes. Indianapolis won the game 27-13. This game was not close. A lot of people want to say that Bryce Young is a bust, that obviously Carolina made a mistake. They should have taken C.J. Stroud. And I'm here to say, well, C.J. Stroud has looked really good early on, and Tank Dell has popped as well as a rookie. Outside of Adam Thielen, who again is an old veteran receiver, uh, Bryce Young has had nothing to work with. At least CJ Stroud has had a good offensive line. He's got a good defense. Bryce Young, the defense not played as well as it should have this year, and they are not protecting him. He almost has no chance. At least Houston's offensive line is keeping CJ Stroud upright. The Carolina offensive line is not keeping Bryce Young outright. They need to go and get him more pieces before I'm ready to call Bryce Young a bust. And then I said it. I said Dameon Pierce and the Las Vegas Raiders. I should have bet them, and I knew it, but I did not want to act stupid if it went the other way. But it's the Giants, so I should have known. I should have replaced my New England bet with this game. But the Raiders came in, they stopped the Giants. I called it, whose season's over because Daniel Jones tore his ACL and Tyrod Taylor's hurt. So they're going to start Danny DeVito, who can't even throw the ball 5 yards down the field. As of now, and again, we'll get into my best bets on Thursday's show. Dallas is favored by 17.5, and I really don't care because I think the Cowboys are going to beat the Giants 40-0 again, and I'll lay 17.5. That's how bad I think the New York Giants are. I think this Dameon Pierce story is so good. The fact that Josh McDaniels let him speak in a meeting where the players basically called Josh McDaniels an idiot. And, Dameon Pierce got not Dameon, Antonio Pierce. I apologize for that. I was thinking of the Houston Texans running back. Antonio Pierce got the attention of the Raiders. And really, that's why he's the interim head coach. Again, I don't love defensive head coaches, but I think just to get some energy, some toughness back in the building. Aiden O'Connell played well. Devontae Adams will hopefully get more involved. As Hunter Renfrow said, they're not going to be able to walk on eggshells anymore. I think Vegas goes in there. I think that they beat the Jets next Sunday night. Then we get to obviously the big game of the day, Philly and Dallas, which the whole world was watching because Indy and Carolina and Vegas Giants stunk. It was bad games. So in the 4 o'clock window, everybody in the world was watching Dak Prescott, who always plays well against the Philadelphia Eagles, like I said he would. I said this would come down to the wire. I said Philadelphia would win between 3 and 7 points. I said only Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts be the difference in the game, and I was right. Situationally, it was a mess at the end, and obviously there was a big scare there at the end of the first half with Jalen Hurts, who, by the way, has not been 50% probably all season long. Yet the Philadelphia Eagles continue to win ball games because they have this culture. They have this belief that no matter what they do, they're going to find a way to win games. Whether it's by throwing the football, whether it's by running the football, whether it's by getting defensive stops. And the veteran Brandon Graham, along with Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick, had a big last drive when it counted down by the goal line. Reed Blankenship with a big stop on the tight end. Ferguson in the fourth quarter. And ultimately, that's why the Philadelphia Eagles hang on. They are battle tested. They are proven they are one of the best teams of the league. When you have the best offensive line, when you have the best defensive line, when you have wide receivers like A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, who had another touchdown in this game, you're going to win a lot of games, and you can even win championships that way in the National Football League. And I said it. I said, I don't trust Sean McDermott. I said, Joe Burrow's the better quarterback. Give me Cincinnati at -2.5. It hit. Bengals winning 24-18 over Buffalo. But really, this game was not close. The Bengals mostly dominated. I mean, outside of a backdoor touchdown, it felt like by Buffalo in the fourth quarter, the Bengals took complete control of the game. And the only reason why Buffalo, who again is a defensive minded head coach, and Sean McDermott, who I really like. I think he's a really smart guy. The only reason why Cincinnati punted in that game was mostly self-inflicted penalties. Now, Ja'Marr Chase may miss some time, which will once again hurt Cincinnati, because the one thing we've seen out of Cincinnati is when Joe Burrow's healthy, when Ja'Marr Chase is healthy, they're almost unbeatable unless they play Kansas City or the Cleveland Browns. When Joe Burrow's limping, when Ja'Marr Chase is not healthy, even when they're out there, this Cincinnati team is not the same team. They are so Burrow Chase dependent that it often hurts them. We'll see if Ja'Marr Chase does indeed miss any time. But in the end, I do think Baltimore, Cincinnati, Kansas City right now are the cause of the AFC. And it's certainly not the Jets, who Zach Wilson had a long night, and Brandon Staley did what he needed to do. We keep saying it on this show, right? The last 2 weeks, the Chargers have been 2-4. They have the Bears at home, the Jets on the road. Inferior teams, inferior quarterbacks against Justin Herbert and the Chargers, who did not have a great night offensively, though Keenan Allen had an incredible catch. A good punt return as well there by the Chargers. They win it 27-6. Really was not a close contest. Again, the 3 games I missed in the money line where I had the Rams over Green Bay, and Einstein probably should have taken Green Bay in that one. And then Atlanta over Minnesota, I had, as well as I had New England over Washington. And, what can you do? Bets wise, Pittsburgh over the 2.5 against Tennessee. Baltimore rolled at 5.5 over Seattle. Philadelphia hit -3 against Dallas. Cincinnati hit -2.5 Sunday night against Buffalo. My only miss was again New England at that 3.5. Did not cover against Washington. Unfortunately, we could have had another perfect week. It was a really good week. We had some good games. It was kind of what we expected. Not a ton of good games, a lot of bad quarterback play, but the games that were marquee turned out to be marquee. Now, the Week 10 NFL slate is nothing to applaud at. It may be one of the worst slates in the history of the National Football League, but I will talk about that more on Thursday. Again, money line, I ended up going 10-3, 4 for 5 in best bets. That puts us at 92-43 on the year in the money line, 28 for 44 with 1 push in best bets. Like that clip from the Brandon Sports Podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brandon Sports Podcast right here on YouTube.